My family kept me as the grease monkey while my brother got executive pay. My cheating husband fed our secrets to competitors. So I sold my $2.8 million patents to their biggest rival, took their major clients, and watched them beg me to save the business I just destroyed. Holy cow, guys. I've been lurking on this sub for months, reading your incredible stories, never thinking I'd have one worth sharing. Boy, was I completely wrong. This saga unfolded over about 18 months, and honestly, I'm still processing everything that happened. Grab some snacks and maybe clear your schedule because this is going to be a marathon. But I absolutely promise the payoff is worth every single word. Before I dive in, I should mention that I've changed some names and minor details for obvious privacy reasons, but everything I'm about to tell you is 100% true. My lawyer actually reviewed this post before I submitted it, just to make sure I wasn't opening myself up to any legal issues. I, 32, have been working on cars since I could barely see over the hood of my dad's pickup truck. What started as handing Robert tools in his garage at age 12 has grown into what you might call an automotive empire in our county. We own the main dealership specializing in heavy-duty trucks, a high-end custom shop building everything from monster trucks to racing vehicles, plus 3 regular repair shops. My grandfather started it all in 1983 with a single-bay garage and massive dreams. By the time Dad took over in the early 2000s, we were pulling in $8 million annually with 45 employees. Then there's my dysfunctional family portrait. My older brother, Derek, 35, is the self-proclaimed business genius who went to college for marketing, has never gotten his hands dirty with actual mechanical work, but could convince people to buy sand in the Sahara Desert. He's got that supernatural salesman charisma that makes customers trust him instantly, even when he's completely clueless about what he's selling. My younger sister, Katie, 28, won the genetic lottery when she married hedge fund hotshot Brad 4 years ago. She's transformed into a professional trophy wife whose biggest daily challenge involves choosing between hot yoga and expensive nail salon appointments. Katie used to work part-time doing admin stuff, but after marrying Brad, decided having a job was beneath her current social status. Then there's me, the woman who actually understands internal combustion engines at a molecular level. I've got my automotive engineering degree, every ASE certification imaginable, and I've designed custom performance parts that shops 3 states over purchase because they can't find anything comparable. I can rebuild transmissions blindfolded and diagnose problems just by sound. But somehow, despite being the technical backbone generating most of our profit through innovative solutions, I was always treated like the family grease monkey while Derek got groomed for the executive suite. My real problem started 3 years ago when I met John at a charity fundraiser Katie dragged me to. Looking back, that decision ranks with the Hindenburg disaster in terms of spectacular failures that should have been obviously terrible ideas. John was handsome, charming, and well-dressed, with the kind of confident grin that made you forget to breathe for a second. He seemed genuinely fascinated by my work, impressed by the family business, and loved riding in the custom trucks I'd built. We had a whirlwind romance, candlelit dinners, mountain getaways, long conversations about our future. He made me feel successful and accomplished, instead of just the family mechanic with some technical skills. We married after 8 months, complete with a $35,000 wedding my parents funded, reception at the fanciest country club, live band, open bar, the whole production. Our Bora Bora honeymoon probably cost more than most people's annual car payments. But reality crashed the party hard. John had very specific expectations about what marrying me meant in terms of lifestyle and financial security. He'd researched our family business online, seen articles about our success, and convinced himself that being married to an owner's daughter meant immediate access to luxury. The problem? While our business was successful on paper, I was still just an employee making $85,000 plus $15,000 in bonuses. Decent money for comfortable living, but definitely not new Range Rover every 2 years and quarterly European vacations money. John started making increasingly pointed comments about how Derek earned significantly more despite not contributing anything meaningful. He'd complain that Katie jetted off on fancy vacations with Brad while we drove my custom F-150 that I was proud of because I designed it myself. He pushed me constantly to demand more money from Dad, insisting I was being taken advantage of. "You're the one with real skills," he'd say. "You make this business work. Why let them treat you like hired help?" The thing that stung was, he wasn't entirely wrong. Derek pulled in $140,000 as VP of Sales for playing golf with customers and attending conferences at expensive resorts. His office was twice mine. He had dedicated parking and drove a loaded $60,000 GMC Sierra. Katie didn't work, but had unlimited access to a company credit card for business expenses like expensive lunches, shopping, and spa treatments, basically using family money as her personal ATM. Meanwhile, I worked 60-hour weeks, designed innovative products generating substantial revenue, trained junior mechanics, and kept the entire technical operation running. Customers specifically requested me for complicated problems, but I made significantly less than Derek with zero input on major decisions. Every time I brought up raises or additional responsibilities, Dad gave the same patronizing responses. "You're learning from the ground up," or "Good things come to those who wait." Classic carrot-dangling manipulation. John became increasingly bitter, making cutting remarks at family dinners about how I was too passive and comparing me to Brad. "He's younger than you and makes 3 times as much. He didn't get there by being patient and hoping someone would notice his work." The breaking point came 18 months ago when Dad announced his 5-year retirement plan. I figured this was my opportunity to claim the leadership role I'd worked toward my entire adult life. But his succession plan felt like a professional boxer's punch to the gut. Derek would become CEO, handling all business operations, strategic planning, and financial oversight. Essentially, the company's face making all major decisions. Katie and Brad would manage finances and oversee expansion. Brad's background would secure loans and manage investments, while Katie handled personnel. And me? I'd continue running service departments with a slightly fancier title. Same job, same responsibilities, same pay scale, just Director of Service Operations on my business cards instead of actual promotion. I'd remain the grease monkey while everyone else ascended to executive status. When I tried arguing my case, explaining I should have a larger role given my expertise and proven innovation track record, Dad just patted my shoulder condescendingly. "Your skills are too valuable in the shop, sweetheart. We need you where you can do your best work." Translation: know your place and stay there forever. John was livid that evening, ranting about how my family was using me and I'd never amount to anything without fighting back aggressively. But then he cut deep. "Maybe you're just not leadership material. Maybe some people are born to follow orders instead of giving them." That night, he claimed he wasn't in the mood and spent the evening texting someone named Kaylin, the younger sister of Rick Morrison, CEO of Apex Performance, our biggest rival. At the time, I didn't know the full extent of what was going on between them, but looking back, it was all so obvious. About 6 months after that devastating family meeting, John's schedule became increasingly erratic and suspicious. He'd leave dressed to the nines for networking dinners or business meetings, but wouldn't return until very late, sometimes the following morning. He'd dress like he was hitting a high-end nightclub, full suit, expensive watch, cologne I'd never smelled on him before. When he came home smelling faintly of Kaylin's floral perfume, which I'd later confirm, his stories never quite added up. "Oh, we went to dinner after meeting some potential clients, then Kaylin wanted to introduce me to a friend's lounge," he'd say casually. But when I'd ask specifics, which restaurant, what lounge, he'd get vague and change the subject. Whenever I pressed, he'd get defensive and turn it around on me. "I need my own life. I can't just sit around waiting for you to make something of yourself. I need to feel like I exist as something other than your wife's mechanic." Around the same time, my work frustration reached a boiling point. Derek started taking credit for the custom performance parts I'd been developing, presenting them to clients as his own innovative ideas and technical breakthroughs. During client meetings, he'd say things like, "I've been working on this new modification that I think will solve your power delivery problems," or "I had an idea for improving fuel efficiency while increasing horsepower." When I confronted him about this blatant intellectual property theft, he just smirked. "Come on, Scarlett, we're family. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. Right? We're all working toward the same goals here." But it wasn't just about credit. He was getting financial bonuses for these innovations I'd created. The custom parts business was generating $400,000 annually, and Derek received quarterly bonuses while I continued getting my regular salary with no additional compensation. That's when I realized I needed a comprehensive exit strategy. What my family didn't understand was that I'd been developing genuinely revolutionary modifications for heavy-duty truck engines during my personal time in my home garage. These weren't minor tweaks. We're talking fundamental performance upgrades that could increase horsepower by 30% while improving fuel efficiency by 15%. I'd been working nights and weekends, spending my own money on parts and equipment, doing research that could potentially transform the entire aftermarket industry. These innovations weren't just better than competitors' offerings, they were breakthrough technologies that could obsolete entire product categories. The real breakthrough came when I developed a method to modify ECU programming on the newest Ford and Chevrolet heavy-duty trucks, unlocking vehicles' full performance potential while maintaining complete emissions compliance, something never achieved before in the aftermarket industry. I quietly filed patents on all these innovations through my personal attorney, documenting that all development work was done on my own time using my own resources. I also began reaching out to competitors, particularly Apex Performance. Rick Morrison, their CEO, had always joked at trade shows about recruiting me. When I contacted him about licensing my technology, he was immediately interested, not just in licensing agreements, but in having me join Apex full-time. Meanwhile, John became increasingly obvious about his friendship with Kaylin. He'd disappear on Friday evenings and return Saturday afternoon, claiming he'd crashed at a buddy's place after too many drinks. But I could see Kaylin's social media showing her at fancy restaurants and rooftop bars during those exact times, sometimes with a blurred figure in the background wearing John's exact watch. The final red flag was his phone secrecy, taking it to the bathroom, sleeping with it under his pillow, getting nervous whenever it buzzed near me. I hired a private investigator for 2 weeks. The results were exactly what I expected, but still painful to see documented in black and white photographs. John was having a full-blown affair with Kaylin Morrison. She wasn't just the sister of our biggest competitor's CEO. She was actively feeding John ideas to pass along to Apex about how they could undercut us in the market. Through pillow talk and private messages, John was passing her insider details about our family business operations, financials, client lists, upcoming projects, business strategies, supplier relationships, and of course, Kaylin was passing them straight to her brother Rick. Now I had a choice: confront John immediately, blow up my marriage dramatically, and probably end up divorced while still trapped in the same dead-end position, watching Derek take credit for my work forever, or use this entire situation to my strategic advantage, turning John's betrayal and my family's disrespect into the foundation for a comprehensive revenge plan. I chose option 2, and I'm not ashamed to admit that planning my revenge became the most satisfying project I'd ever undertaken. Instead of confronting John immediately and giving him a chance to cover his tracks or warn Kaylin about what I'd discovered, I decided to let them keep digging their own graves while I put my real plan into motion. Every day he continued the affair was another day I could use to prepare my exit strategy and gather more evidence of his deception. I reached out to Rick Morrison and told him I was seriously interested in discussing a comprehensive business partnership, not just licensing my technology for a one-time fee. I wanted to sell him everything and transition to working for Apex full-time as their new Director of Technical Innovation. Rick was absolutely thrilled. He'd seen what I was capable of producing and understood that acquiring both me and my innovations would be enormously valuable for Apex's competitive position in the market. We started negotiating a deal where I'd sell him exclusive rights to all my patents for $2.8 million up front, plus a $180,000 annual salary and 5% equity in the company. But I wanted much more than just a lucrative job offer and financial security. I wanted comprehensive revenge against everyone who had disrespected me, taken advantage of me, or betrayed me. I told Rick about the information leak that had been happening through John and Kaylin, providing him with documentation of how his sister had been feeding him insider intelligence about our business operations without proper disclosure. Rick was initially furious that his own sister had been engaging in what amounted to industrial espionage, but he was also smart enough to recognize the incredible opportunity this situation presented. We developed a comprehensive plan that would not only extract me from the family business, but systematically destroy their competitive advantages and market position in the process. The strategy was elegantly simple, but devastatingly effective. I would continue working at the family business while secretly preparing to transfer 3 of our most valuable clients to Apex when I made my departure. These weren't just any customers. We're talking about the local mining company that spent $300,000 annually on truck modifications and fleet maintenance. The regional construction company that purchased 20 to 30 custom vehicles every year. The professional racing team whose engines we'd been building exclusively for the past 5 years. These 3 clients represented approximately 40% of our annual revenue. Losing them would be catastrophic for the family business. I'd also been cultivating strong personal relationships with our key suppliers over the years, and they were getting increasingly frustrated with Dad's old-school negotiation tactics and Derek's habit of making unrealistic promises he couldn't deliver on. They preferred working with me because I actually understood the technical requirements, provided accurate timelines, and didn't jerk them around with last-minute changes or unreasonable demands. Over the next 8 months, I quietly copied client contact information, documented all our proprietary processes and techniques, and essentially prepared to walk away with the entire technical infrastructure that made our business successful. I was careful to only copy information during my regular work hours and only access files that were legitimately part of my job responsibilities. So I wasn't technically stealing anything or violating any computer access policies. John, meanwhile, was becoming increasingly careless about his deception. He started staying out overnight during weekdays, claiming he was meeting investors with Kaylin. He bought a whole new wardrobe using our joint credit cards, tailored suits, designer shoes, cologne that screamed midlife crisis. He even started charging expensive spa treatments and fine dining to our account. The final financial red flag came when I discovered he'd opened a separate bank account and had been systematically transferring money from our joint savings, about $25,000 over 6 months, money that was supposed to be going toward a down payment on a house we'd been planning to buy. When I asked him directly about these transfers, he claimed it was for investment opportunities that would benefit both of us, and became angry that I was monitoring him like some controlling wife. "I'm trying to build something for our future," he said indignantly. "I'm trying to make us money instead of just sitting around waiting for your family to decide to pay you what you're worth." But I knew the truth. He was building a financial cushion to support himself during his transition from being my husband to being Kaylin's kept man. That's when I knew it was time to execute my carefully planned revenge. 3 weeks ago, I had everything perfectly positioned for the most satisfying confrontation of my life. My deal with Apex was finalized, contracts signed, and money already transferred into escrow accounts. My patents were legally transferred to Apex. I had signed agreements with all 3 major clients to move their business to Apex upon my departure, with financial incentives that made the transition even sweeter for them. But I wanted to make absolutely certain my family understood exactly why this was happening, who was ultimately responsible for the destruction of their business, and how their own actions had created the situation they were about to face. I set up an elaborate trap for John and Kaylin that would definitively prove they were still actively betraying me. I deliberately left some fabricated financial documents on my home computer showing that the family business was planning a major expansion that would significantly increase my income and give me a substantial ownership stake. The fake documents showed a planned $5 million expansion, new government contracts worth $2 million annually, and a restructuring that would make me a full partner with a $200,000 salary and 25% ownership of the company. I made sure they looked completely authentic and left them in a folder on my desktop where John would easily find them during one of his habitual snooping sessions. Within 48 hours, Rick called me to confirm. Kaylin had already contacted him to warn Apex about our supposed expansion plans. That was all the confirmation I needed. Then I had a carefully orchestrated conversation with Derek, where I pretended to be extremely excited about some new military contract we were supposedly bidding on, potentially worth about $1.5 million annually for custom vehicle modifications. I made sure to mention specific details about the contract requirements, the timeline for implementation, and how much additional staff we'd need to hire. I knew Derek would immediately run to Dad with this information, and they'd start making financial plans and operational changes based on revenue that would never materialize. The hook was perfectly set, and all I had to do was wait for the right moment to spring the trap. That moment came last Friday when I walked into Dad's office for our regular weekly operations meeting. Derek was there as usual along with Katie, who'd been attending more meetings lately, because Brad thought she should be more involved in the family business operations and financial planning. I sat down at the conference table and laid out my carefully prepared trap with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly about how the next few minutes were going to unfold. I've been thinking seriously about the retirement transition plan we discussed, I began, and I have some significant concerns about the technical side of the business moving forward. Dad immediately perked up, probably expecting me to finally accept my designated role and stop asking for more responsibility. I've been developing some new innovations over the past few years that could potentially be worth substantial money to whoever owns them, I continued. Derek jumped in before Dad could respond. That's great, sis. Innovation is exactly what we need to stay competitive. What kind of timeline are we looking at for implementation? Dad was nodding approvingly. Your technical skills have always been your greatest strength, Scarlett. I'm glad to see you thinking strategically about how to contribute to the company's future. That's when I dropped the first bomb. Actually, I've already filed patents for several breakthrough technologies, I said calmly, and since I developed them entirely on my own time using my personal resources, they belong to me exclusively. The conference room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. The expressions on their faces shifted from enthusiasm to confusion to dawning horror as they began to understand the implications. Katie was the first to speak, her voice high and shrill. You can't do that. That has to be illegal or something. You work here. Derek's face flushed red. Everything you know about this business came from us. You can't just steal our intellectual property and claim it's yours. Dad attempted to remain calm and diplomatic, but panic was showing in his eyes. Scarlett, let's discuss this rationally and professionally. I'm sure we can work out some kind of mutually beneficial arrangement that recognizes both your contributions and the company's investment in your development. I smiled at all of them and delivered the line I'd been practicing. I've already worked out an arrangement with Apex Performance. The silence that followed was deafening. Then I dropped the second bomb. I'm quitting effective immediately, and I'll be taking my patents, my client relationships, and my supplier connections with me to my new position as Director of Technical Innovation at Apex. Derek shot up from his chair, voice shaking with rage. You backstabbing traitor, after everything we've done for you, after all the opportunities we've given you. That's when I dropped the final, most devastating bomb. Everything you've done for me, like paying me 40% less than Derek while I generated twice as much revenue, like planning to keep me stuck in the same subordinate position forever while you two got rich off my work? Or maybe you're referring to my husband systematically feeding inside information about our business operations to your competitors. The looks on their faces were priceless. Shock, betrayal, confusion, and dawning realization that their entire world was about to collapse. I walked out of that meeting and drove straight home, where John was getting ready for another one of his business meetings. He was wearing a crisp new suit I'd never seen before, a flashy watch, and way too much cologne. I sat him down at the kitchen table and laid out everything I knew. The affair with Kaylin, the secret bank account, the systematic betrayal of my trust, the information leaked to Apex Performance, all backed with documentation and photographs. He tried the denial route first. I don't know what you're talking about. You're being paranoid and controlling. Then he switched to blame shifting. This is your fault. If you had any ambition, if you fought for what you deserved, instead of just accepting whatever scraps your family threw at you, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere for someone who actually has goals and drive. Finally, when those failed, he got cruel. Kaylin treats me like a king. She has ambition. She has plans. She's actually going somewhere in life while you're content to be your daddy's little grease monkey forever. I just laughed. Funny you should say that. Kaylin's brother fired her yesterday after discovering the information leak. And Apex is planning to sue both of you for industrial espionage. Good luck building a future with an unemployed woman who's about to be blacklisted from her entire industry. Then I delivered the knockout blow. Oh, and John, I'm filing for divorce on Monday morning. Good luck explaining to your lawyer where that $25,000 went. and how you're going to support yourself now that your sugar sister is broke." John's face drained of all color. He sputtered, searching for something to say, but nothing came out. I stood, grabbed my bag, and walked out, leaving him sitting there in his tailored suit, the uniform of a man who had just lost everything. But that dramatic confrontation was just the opening act of my revenge symphony. Over the weekend, Apex Performance made a series of strategic announcements that sent shockwaves through the entire industry. They unveiled a revolutionary new performance division, featuring exclusive breakthrough technology that would completely transform the heavy-duty truck market and obsolete current aftermarket solutions. They also announced they had secured partnerships with major clients in the mining and construction sectors, and hired a new director of technical innovation, me, with an exclusive patent portfolio. By Monday morning, my family's phones were ringing off the hook. Clients were canceling orders, suppliers were demanding clarification, and competitors were circling like sharks. Dad called me every hour, each message more desperate than the last. Derek left a dozen voicemails, swinging wildly between legal threats and begging me to come back and work this out as a family. Even Katie texted nonstop, accusing me of destroying the family legacy and being selfish. Within a few days, the full damage became clear. Losing my innovations and 3 major clients meant an immediate 60% drop in revenue. The custom parts business, gone. The annual $1 million+ from key contracts, gone. To make matters worse, Dad had taken out a $3.2 million business loan for expansion based on the fake military and government contracts I'd fed them through Derek. Now, without the projected revenue, they were staring down bankruptcy. And I wasn't finished yet. I'd also been quietly documenting the company's gray area practices over the years: warranty fraud, emissions compliance manipulation, paying workers under the table, nothing that would land anyone in prison, but enough to trigger expensive regulatory investigations. One by one, I sent anonymous reports to the EPA, IRS, and State Labor Department. Within weeks, my family was facing audits, inspections, and fines on top of their financial collapse. 2 weeks after I quit, Dad showed up at my apartment at 11 p.m., looking like he'd aged 20 years. His voice trembled as he admitted, they had 30 days to come up with $800,000 or the bank would seize everything. I let him talk. I let him confess that Derek couldn't handle the business without me, that he'd been afraid of my talent and had kept me down out of fear I'd leave. His offer was generous: 40% ownership, $150,000 starting salary, complete technical control, but it was too late. I told him I was staying at Apex. The best I'd offer was licensing older patents and consulting for a short period in exchange for $50,000 and covering my divorce legal fees. He agreed without hesitation. Meanwhile, John's world was crumbling. Tyler was gone, Kaylin had been cut off by her brother, and the corporate lawsuit against them both was moving forward. The $25,000 John siphoned from our savings was long gone, blown on impressing a woman who'd dropped him the second her own safety net disappeared. The divorce was clean and fast, thanks to my airtight documentation of his infidelity and financial misconduct. He walked away with nothing. And me, I was thriving. My salary at Apex, my equity, and my patents put me in a position I'd never imagined. I wasn't just valued, I was respected. 3 months later, at an industry trade show, I met Harlan, a former engineer turned business consultant who specialized in scaling high-performance automotive divisions. We hit it off immediately, not just because he was brilliant and driven, but because he respected what I'd built and what I'd fought for. We started collaborating professionally, and before long, it turned into something personal. With Harlan, I didn't have to prove my worth. He already saw it. No games, no power struggles, no betrayal, just partnership. The last time I saw John was at a local strip mall coffee shop where he was working behind the counter in a faded polo shirt, making minimum wage. He looked up, recognition flashing in his eyes, but I simply smiled, took Harlan's hand, and walked out. Some people need to learn their lessons the hard way. From that day forward, everything in my life shifted. At Apex, I wasn't the grease monkey anymore. I was the driving force behind their new market dominance. My work was being recognized on national platforms. Trade publications were doing interviews with me, and major suppliers were lining up to work with us because of my reputation. Harlan was there through all of it, supporting, advising, and celebrating each win without a hint of jealousy or competition. He told me more than once, "You were always this good. You just needed to be somewhere they let you shine." Meanwhile, my family's empire shrank to a shadow of what it once was. The bank seized their unused expansion facility. They laid off more than half their employees, and the executive paychecks Derek and Katie were used to vanished overnight. They limped along with a few small contracts, but the glory days were over. I didn't take joy in the employees losing jobs. They'd been good people caught in the crossfire. But I did take satisfaction in knowing the ones who underestimated and exploited me were now living with the consequences of their choices. As for John, last I heard, he moved 2 states away, working in some low-level sales position that barely covered his rent. I didn't think about him much anymore. He was just a bad chapter in an otherwise incredible book. Harlan and I eventually bought a home together. It wasn't the flashy mansion John used to dream about. It was a beautiful, modern house with a big garage where I could tinker with projects just for fun. On weekends, we'd take road trips in custom builds I designed myself, visiting clients and exploring small towns. One evening, sitting on our back deck watching the sunset, Harlan asked me if I ever regretted how everything went down. I thought about it for a long moment. "No," I said finally, "not one bit. Because if none of that had happened, I'd still be in that shop, being treated like I was lucky to be there. And I never would have learned just how much I'm capable of when I stop letting other people define my worth." He kissed my forehead, and for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't in a long, long time: peace. I didn't just survive the betrayal. I built something better because of it. And I wasn't going to let anyone, family, lover, or rival, ever take that from me again.